Hello, my name is Justine Mullen, and today I'm applying for the Cheraho secondary education position in Spanish. I will be showing you a lesson from my Spanish 2 Honors class. We focused on the preterite, specifically on the locos. The verbs in this group are verbs such as poder, estar, tener. Verbs like these have weird or strange roots, and thus I call them the locos because they're a little crazy. Also, we are going to review medical vocabulary. Enjoy. The students were first given this half sheet. This says los verbos locos de pretérito. Vamos a practicar. They were first to tell me what los verbos de er end with. They have already learned the basic structure of the preterite and should know these endings very well. And thus we filled them out as a class. First the AR, then we moved on to the ER-IR, and then on to los verbos locos. The students are not quite yet familiar with los verbos locos, the loco verbs, so the crazy verbs. And thus I showed them that it was a hybrid, a mixture of both the AR and ER-IR. They are as followed: iste, o, imos, istais, ieron. I show the students that the yo form and the el form are from the AR, and that the tú, nosotros, vosotros, and ellos are from the ER-IR. This visual really helped them gain an understanding of where these endings even come from and why they're there. We then worked on the roots. Andar is anduv, poner, pus, querer, quis, estar, estuve, and so forth. I then asked the students to identify any that they already know. For instance, poner, what does that mean? They would respond, if they knew, to put or to set. And right next to the root, we would write pus / to put or to set. Same thing with venir, for instance. Vin / to come. We would do this for all of the following. Before the students move on to this side of the half sheet, I have them practice out loud the verb conjugations. I may say, he put, and the students would respond with puso. We do many activities like this during the school year. We play a ball game where the students pass around the ball and conjugate the verb as they go one by one, or even matching manipulatives, English to Spanish or pronoun to verb, trying to get the students to practice their verbal and reading comprehension. Next, we move on to the back. The students are allowed to work in pairs for this portion of the activity, since writing the words out is new to them. Together they work to answer these 12 questions. Once they have finished, we go over them together, reading the sentence completely in Spanish and in English so the students can hear the verb and understand exactly how it is used in the past. An activity I use with my students. Here they will practice their verb conjugations in both written and verbal form. The students are to fill out this entire sheet using the conjugations. I have provided them with a few clues to help them remember the tricky stems of the locos. Together with a partner, they will practice their verbal skills, playing a game called Battleship. The students will fill up the whole sheet with the verb conjugations and say specific words to each other in order to win the game. The students love to play competitions, but this helps them without them even knowing that they are practicing their verbal skills, something so tricky to new learners. Here, I have provided the students with an easier way to view the new verbs. There, I am breaking down the verbs into particular sections. For instance, in this section, these are the uv verbs, anduv, estuv, and tuv. The students will practice in small groups, which I have divided for them. They also have words that are pood, pus, soup. I'm hoping that through this activity, they are able to break down the information into smaller groups so that they can recall this information, and it will cause them less anxiety about remembering each stem separately. And then, of course, we have the last section, the I section, quis, is, and vin. Once students have completed this entire packet, we will go over it as a team, as a class. The students will read the sentence out loud, and I've even provided them at times space to write it in English so they can see what it looks like when describing it in the past tense. All the paperwork you have seen so far is just some of the practice activities I give to my students. Here is an example of a locos quiz, a prueba. Here the students have to give me the roots, the endings, as well as apply what they have learned about pronoun and verb agreement in order to create cohesive sentences. Practice the locos for a while. The students will move on to vocabulary, so we can incorporate new words into prior knowledge. The students will look at the pictures first. They will see what they recognize, if they know any words in Spanish already. Once the students have done that, we will identify the words through sentences. For example, I will, in an exaggerated way, demonstrate for the students what each word means. For instance, this picture. I may say something like, Me corté la rodilla ayer. Hay mucha sangre. Necesito una venda. For those who don't know Spanish, you might be very confused just by hearing that. But I love charades, and I make sure the students can understand exactly what I'm saying. What I did say in this sentence was, I cut my knee yesterday. There is a lot of blood. I need a bandage. I may grab my knee, make my hands look as if blood is spewing out of my knee, and then wrap it as if I'm wrapping it with a bandage. The students will get an idea of what I'm talking about, and I may even hear a few students say bandage, knee, blood, all correct. But as they say those words, I'll repeat them in Spanish. They say knee, I'll say rodilla. They say blood, I'll say sangre, necesito una venda. Sangre, blood, necesito una venda. The venda is a bandage. And in this space, they would write una venda. And we would do this for the rest of the words. This takes about a day of class. But it really does benefit the students to hear those words and to see them in action. Have practiced vocabulary for a while. We will move on to incorporating the vocabulary with the prior knowledge of the locos, as you can see here. Before we even look at the paragraph, I will have the students look at the picture and ask them to tell me what they see. What do they think is going on? What vocabulary do they see? I would even ask them to write it down aside to the picture. Once we have discussed what we see, we will move on to the paragraph. First, I will ask the students to identify any vocabulary they see by underlining the words, subrayan las palabras. The students will do that, and then we will work as a team, as a class, to circle the verbs, the proper conjugated verbs in the sentence. Once we have completed circling the words, we will read the story together, and the students will interpret it in both Spanish and English. Look at that sheet. There is even more practice. The students can work again or individually in order to complete this worksheet. Once the students have practiced their vocabulary along with their verb conjugations, I will ask them to take a look at this sheet. The students will first identify any vocabulary they see, and then they will begin to write their own sentences. But not just any sentences, I want a story, just as we read in the first paragraph on the front of that sheet. The students will create their own story about this boy, girl, man or woman, about what happened to them. They sure broke a lot of bones. The students can pick and choose. They have to use at least of the 5 objects they see here to write a comprehensive story. Once the students have finished writing this story, they will share in class, reading it in Spanish, and then the class will answer questions that I will produce in Spanish as well, to gain an understanding of what we just heard and what we see on this sheet. The students have already practiced a lot of reading, writing, and verbal communication. Now I want them to practice some listening. First, I will ask the students to describe what they see here, in Spanish, of course. It may take a little while for the students to create their own sentences and verbally portray them, but I'm willing to wait. I want to see what they think is going on before even hearing the listening occur. Once we have shared some of our ideas, we will listen to the audio tape, and we will number and label each event as it occurs. As we finish the vocabulary, the students will receive a quiz. On this quiz is not only going to be the vocabulary, though, it will also include the locos, the other verbs we learned previously. It is important to include a comprehensive quiz so that I can understand the students can use the words with the vocabulary, words and verbs. In the first section, this is a listening section. The students will hear the vocabulary as well as the locos included. They may hear a sentence such as, Las enfermeras me trajeron a la sala de emergencia. Just like you're seeing here, the nurses brought me to the emergency room. But then they also have to fill in a more basic form of the locos, which will only help them when they have to read a passage that has them decide, shall I use poder or venir between locos and the correct conjugation. And then to finish it up, I gave them a simpler form of conjugation just to make sure they have this format down. Thank you for providing me with an opportunity to show you one of my lessons. I am sorry that I could not show you this presentation in a more formal manner or in front of a classroom, but I do hope you enjoyed hearing about one of my lessons to my 2 honors Spanish class. I await your decision, and thank you again.